Well, good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, depending upon where you are in the world, and welcome to today's DevOps.com webinar. I'm Charlene O'Hanlon, moderator for today's event, and I welcome you. We have a great event on tap. This is a great topic, and I'm very, very excited about this one. But before we get started, we do have a few housekeeping items we need to go over. First of all, today's event is being recorded, so if you miss any or all of the event, you will have the opportunity to access it later on. Following today's webinar, we will be sending out an email that contains a link to access the webinar on demand. And we are taking questions from the audience. So if at any time during today's presentation you have a question for any of our speakers, please don't wait, don't hesitate, just use the question and answer tab there on your interface and submit your questions. We'll try to get to as many as we can near the end of today's webinar. We also have a very interactive chat, so I do encourage you to please chat us your questions, comments, suggestions, whatever you want to share with us. We will be more than happy to include that in the conversation, and we might even chat you back. And finally, at the end of today's webinar, we are going to be doing a drawing for 4 $100 Amazon gift cards, so please stick around. Hopefully you'll be one of our 4 lucky winners. All right, with that, let's go ahead and kick off today's webinar, which is data protection in telco 5G edge environments. Also, data protection and container security in 5G edge environments. We have 2 separate titles there. This one is going to be a good one. Speaking today, we have Tim Riley, who is the CEO of Zetaset.
Hi, Charlene.
Yes. Hi, Tim. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Great. We also have Maxim Yankovsky, who is the CTO over at Zetaset. Maxim, thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
It's a pleasure.
And finally, we have Fatih Nar, who is the Chief Architect for Application Platform Solutions at Red Hat. Fatih, thank you also for your time today. Really do appreciate it. All right, so Tim, you were going to kick off the conversation. I'm going to take myself off camera, give you guys a little more real estate, put myself on mute. I'll see you when we get to the question and answer period. But until then, have a great webinar, guys.
Great. Thank you, Charlene. So again, I'm Tim Riley. I'm the CEO of Zetaset. Some quick background on us. We view data protection as more than just, in this case, encryption. It involves data monitoring, any type of backup, restore, logging. There are a whole bunch of different pieces that make up data protection. But what we want to focus on here is how we protect data with encryption, how we monitor if someone's reading and writing any kind of views of data, which means there's bad actors. So there's a wealth of different things involved, and we all know the attack vectors have continued to grow, especially with us going from what I would say is petabytes to almost exabytes of data that's being generated. So how do we help? We're here along with our greatest partner we have with Red Hat on both the RHEL and the base, and with OpenShift in the new world of containers. With that, we're able with the RHEL servers to be the legacy vendor to help them, and then also move forward into the DevOps world where we know the future of everything is going. For us, we work across any kind of environment because where we do our software, we are able to be transparent. And that means doesn't matter virtual, physical, hybrid, cloud, all the buzzwords, we can be there and are applicable. Well, the big thing for at least one piece of data protection is crypto. Again, we do other things, is it's a calculation. It's going to slow things down. So can we minimize that across edge, cloud, anything like that? And of course, we did this, and that's why we have a business. We did it in a way that there's minimal performance impact, and it gives you that data protection. Well, if you do all this, if you have thousands of nodes, which is where we're all talking about today with telco and 5G, how are you able to control them centrally? And that is really one of the key differentiators for us, is if you can do that, if you can manage it all, and you can monitor, and you can have remediation, there's the value in data protection in these new environments we live in. And we've been a great partner with Red Hat, and we're a solution partner of the year. We got some smart people like Maxim, and we have quite a few cryptography and performance data protection patents. So these guys know their stuff. I just happen to be the dumb guy they put in charge. Next slide. Great. Maxim is going to talk to this because this is beyond me, but this gets into all the different vectors and issues that you're going to find in these edge and telco environments. Go for it.
Right. Thank you, Tim. That was a very good intro. There is some echo. Maybe you guys can go on mute. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Yeah, so microservices and 5G technologies have been kind of hand in hand for a while now, and 5G and edge computing definitely accelerate microservices adoption because um, microservices is essentially a de facto architecture for anything 5G, anything edge, just because of the way that the network and the topology is structured. Now, 5G and edge computing does have certain security built into it. Think about device trust to the network, think about network components trusting each other, but don't let that implicit trust fool you because 5G networks are inherently multi-tenant. The 5G network performance necessitates the data moving away from the traditional data center closer to the edge, and that opens up a whole lot of security holes. Um, as different companies gain access to different endpoints, and like I said, the environments are massively multi-tenant. We're looking at different kinds of vulnerability, whether there are API vulnerability, whether containers are broken in, and whether persistent volumes are compromised. You name it, they've got it. And that's a good point in the presentation to say data protection is one of the important aspects of security, and data protection and safety is never one product, never one solution. So, like Tim said, we're working with Red Hat very, very closely. They provide a platform, they provide a basic security. We bring in the next level security and next level data protection for enterprises. And 5G and microservices architecture definitely emphasize the need for those. You can see that the 5G necessitates different approach to data protection all across the board, whether it's encrypting data at rest, whether it's encrypting data in motion, or whether it's managing and deploying standardized policies, um, anything data protection. The main point here is that you cannot and absolutely should not use the legacy approaches to data protection and encryption in modern microservices-based environment. So why is that? What is 5G doing to the microservices architecture in general? Uh, the distributed nature of 5G, if you think back to 4G and 3G networks, the distributed nature of 5G networks basically necessitates microservices as a reference architecture because virtual run is now distributed. Services run all across the network. Um, and enterprises and service providers realize that, and they're starting to switch and shift from the legacy monolithic applications towards a more modern microservices based architecture. And that's actually a very good time as they re-architect those applications to run on microservices to build in security and to build in data protection, because adding data protection later on is usually a more expensive and less secure proposition. I'm going to put Fatih on the spot here a little bit to give his deeper or higher level architectural view of 5G using his unique experiences in what he is building. Fatih, go ahead.
All right. So first thing first, my name is Fatih Nara. I'm a chief architect at Red Hat. I'm mainly in the global engagements and support and solutioning for everything about telco and other verticals as well. Before joining Red Hat, I was part of Google, and before that, I was part of Verizon Cloud and another Linux distro. Many lives ago, I was a software developer for enterprises. So through my journey, starting from a perspective of a software engineer, writing telco applications, telco protocol stacks, and then delivering it in field with solutioning, and then focusing on what makes it more performant and secure. When you zoom in, and you will see that, it starts from networking security, networking control, access control lists, firewall rules, and lists. And then on top, you see host operating system, super critical. Why? Because this is not a hobby business. This is an enterprise business. This is where the money-making machines are running together with the business logics inside. Business logics could be a 5G core system. Business logic could be an application running on a 5G core system. delivering, say, low latency gaming or IoT services, this and that. So as Maxim was mentioning, throughout the journey, throughout the timeline, throughout the software development cycles, what we experienced is as granular as you can go with your software packaging and delivery, i.e. microservices, more scalable you become and less prone to errors, either system errors or human errors. Why? Because your software is more atomic and everybody knows what's inside and there's dedicated people for it. If you're not familiar with the 12 factor, please go Google it, 12 factor for microservices. You will see all the Bible rules for writing a good cloud native scalable software. You will see all that. And one of the rules is having dedicated and focused developers for microservices themselves. Okay? This is where scalability, this is where security, this is where mainly elasticity comes into a picture. Does it answer your request, Maxim?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for providing that, higher level view. It's actually an excellent segue into the next slide. That 5G and edge computing, these are no longer buzzwords. I don't know if they ever were, but they're not. What 5G does to edge computing essentially brings in, quote unquote, the ability to handle infinite number of devices on the network and have those devices perform. And those devices can be anything from edge controllers, smart cars, smart homes, sensors used in healthcare, telecom. Any industry you can think of will definitely benefit from 5G and from edge computing. Think about the energy sector. You can deploy smart sensors to monitor energy consumption. Think about healthcare, all the different devices connected to one network that can perform, and suddenly you have a connected hospital where patients and doctors are no longer waiting for the x-rays to show up just because the network is congested. Retail locations, even remote, can benefit from faster data transmission rates. And certain provisions are made, and we're going to talk about it more in the context of Zetaset solutions, and specifically what we're doing in terms of addressing remote locations with sporadic or barely any connectivity to the corporate data center, because those locations still produce a lot of data. That data is still sensitive. By the way, that's a good place in the presentation to say, if you think that there are data elements which are not sensitive, I would strongly suggest that you think again, because if you look at an individual data element, it could or could not be sensitive in the context of itself. Now, if you put it in the context of hundreds and thousands of different other data elements that are available about that entity, the entity being corporation or a person, suddenly in the context of all the other data elements, that particular not sensitive data element becomes very, very sensitive. You put it in the collection and you can derive a lot of intelligence from it. And that's essentially a gold mine for bad actors. The answer here, and I see Fatih nodding his head, which I think he's showing the agreement that there is no such thing as data that's not sensitive, especially in this massive data environments. And what we're working really hard is to make security and data protection so transparent and so performant that there's really no excuse for not deploying it. And you can take the decision making with respect to security and data protection outside of the developers' hands and heads. So they basically deploy everything in a secure environment without having to jump through hoops to do that.
So it's just a few things in here, right? So when people look at this edge computing, and it goes and reads some white papers and articles and blog posts, they will say, "Why, this is not anything new. This is what distributed computing is, which we have been using," which is true, right? But what you are missing is, there's a keyword called democratizing ML AI, democratizing computing. Edge computing is actually democratizing computing infrastructure for you, so you can afford to access and use these infrastructures wherever you are, whenever you need, by means of elasticity, by means of scale. So when you're doing that, so whenever somebody telling you, we are democratizing the infrastructure, okay, I'm bringing you democracy, right? So what am I giving up on? What am I giving up? So here's the thing. If you're reaching affordable, accessible infrastructure and close to you as a geo proximity, and easy to deploy and undeploy and configure. When you look inside, as Maxim was pointing, what are your critical assets? Yes, your application is a critical asset that makes money. At the same time, your application can crunch and create data, which is significantly important, not only from privacy perspective, but also business perspective as well. So managing that data properly in this more distributed fashion, micro infrastructures becomes more, I would say, not a pain point, but hassle to deal with as comparison to before. Because before we had the giant data centers, nobody could go in. Now we have similar small footprints of infrastructures. Somebody can reach to those computes physically or virtually. So you have to deal more security for not only for access control, but also privacy manner, but as well as business manner as well.
Great points, and this is, I just want to kind of summarize it by saying you said a great fatigue, democratizing the data centers or the infrastructure affords organizations additional degree of freedom, and with freedom comes the additional degree of responsibility. Right? You don't just take freedom for granted. You share the responsibility, and so now the data protection is a shared responsibility. Right? And so it's not just the data center that affords you a degree of physical protection. You're now at the edge. You're now at the far edge with micro data center that's half a rack or a quarter of a rack somewhere out in the desert, attaching the RAN tower, in a nuclear submarine, in the DoD use case, and so on and so forth. You don't have consistent internet connectivity. That does not mean you have the luxury of not protecting the data. So I think that's enough emphasis on this point, but like Fatih said, and like I want to reemphasize that not thinking about data protection from the get-go is there's no excuse for that. So why we're here, why we're doing what we're doing, and why Zetaset and Red Hat. Red Hat and Red Hat OpenShift is basically, in our view, a de facto standard for anything microservices. It's a unique fit in terms of the platform for anything microservice-related architectures, 5G, edge computing, any sort of architecture that needs microservices, any sort of architecture that needs reliability and high availability, and large-scale scaling. What Zetaset brings to the picture is a set of solutions which are part of what we call the Xscript family, where we have a set of solutions and set of products which allow us to protect the data in a variety of environments, including Red Hat OpenShift, but also in more kind of legacy traditional servers running Red Hat, cloud, multi-cloud, hybrid environments. Any environment that you think your data may reside or transition to, we have a product and a solution that allows you to protect the data. And the product is always aware of the environment where it's running. So we're protecting the data in a similar way, but if we look at our OpenShift product, it's aware that it's protecting persistent volumes. If you look at our server protection product, it's aware that it's protecting partitions on the server. So while we are running encryption deep inside the kernel stack, we're maintaining the high-level view and high-level understanding of the environment we're protecting. That allows us to do things like management console, which is basically a single pane of glass to manage everything data protection. It allows us to do things like smart keys, which is attaching intelligence to encryption keys and basically understanding what objects, whether it's persistent volumes or S3 objects or partitions on the server, what objects that encryption key is protecting. That gives us surgical access to be able to revoke those keys, to decommission the objects, and quickly address the compromise.
So Maxim, maybe I can add something here from a higher level that the infrastructure evolution has really gotten to a point. I'm not saying that Kubernetes and containers and virtualization is the end all be all, but I think for the foreseeable future, and that's decades, you're going to see this be the basis for any type of growth in any enterprise, any organization's build out. And in that challenge, you can go back in history. If you've got a house, you've got a kingdom, you need to lock it up. And at this point, the challenge is, as it's one home, 3 homes, distributed homes, you have to be able to centrally manage that security and do it. And as the buildings change, the infrastructure changes, the security needs to evolve with it. So new infrastructure technology requires new security to stick with it. Without that, the bad guys are going to find a way in. It's inevitable. And if the cat and mouse game, it'll be there perpetually. We all know the bad actors, the nation states, will always find a way, but we just need to minimize the window, and we need to make sure we can detect them quick enough and do some sort of remediation. And that all starts from having the ability to scale with a technology like OpenShift. So I'd like to finish it by saying, if you're going to manage the data, you better protect it. Wherever it goes, you have to be able to enable that value of infrastructure like OpenShift to work and not be inhibited or prohibited from growth because of concerns about data protection. Okay.
Just a few things in this, if I may chime in. If you go one slide before. Yes. So it's not that Red Hat brings that so that can secure our platform. It's not that we have gaps that so we usually depend on ZSS. Here's the perspective you need to look at, okay? So human life, as well as enterprise business or businesses themselves, as Simon Sinek says, it's infinite game, right? It's infinite, it never ends. Even technology is same as well. Technology grows, sometimes dies, and sometimes evolves, and it continuously develops and enhances itself. So when the Red Hat started the business as a Linux distro, grow up from there, right? From operating system into platforms, into management OSS, BSS tool sets, as well as CI/CD tool sets, so on and so forth. But here's the thing: while you're evolving into the next thing as a platform, as an application vendor, or as an application host facility, you like to have options, because the options you used yesterday may not necessarily will fit into your business needs tomorrow. So ZSS in this picture brings really good and valuable, I think, important feature sets to go with Red Hat portfolio. However, as I said, you have to keep evolving. ZSS portfolio will evolve as well as Red Hat portfolio, as well as other portfolios. So you have to think in a continuous manner rather than static manner.
Absolutely, and I think it's an excellent point that we're essentially building on top of what the platform provides. As the platform is maturing and the platform offers excellent security features as well, we're building on top of those. We're extending and enhancing those, and so I think it's a unique approach that I see in the marketplace in general. What Red Hat is doing with their platform is that it's opening up to partners to provide additional value to customers through a strong partnership and the ability to develop solutions that build on the strength of the platform and provides kind of a next level, protection and security in that regard. So yeah.
So sometimes people ask why Red Hat is an open source first company. Let me tell you from my personal perspective. Why open source? Open source lets you access infinite brilliant minds like the people in ZSS to leverage their expertise and their work in harmony with what you're doing on the open source side. So ZSS goes and extend the APIs of the Kubernetes that we are providing and plugs themselves into. Guess how they do this? Because this is open source.
Exactly. And the other point that Fatih made earlier is that if you look at that picture, you can see that in traditional and legacy architecture, you had an enterprise data center where the data resides. You had physical confines, as one engineer once told me, nobody's going to drive a truck into our data center and steal the hard drives. Now, I do find that questionable because, yeah, physical data theft is certainly a concern. But you had a building, you had a Fort Knox, for lack of a better term. You had the physical protection, you have the network protection, you had all those degrees of protection that you kind of came to rely on as an enterprise. Now enter 5G, enter edge computing, and suddenly you start having all those edges, right? You have the provider edge, you have the enterprise edge, you have the farther edge, the very, very far edge, you have the device edge, and then there's so many edges because there are so many processing data points that needs access to the data. The data is moving out of the data center, closer to the edge. Number of deployments increases not even exponentially, a lot higher than that. And as the data moves closer to the edge, the quote-unquote data centers, micro data centers, the small footprint data centers, they become smaller and smaller. They become, in terms of physical factor, less and less protected. The infrastructure protection is definitely insufficient. And the other point is, if you deploy 10,000 edge nodes, how do you manage all of that? How do you make sure that when you detect a compromise, if you can even detect a compromise, how do you make sure you can address it quickly and respond to it uh, without having to decommission half of your infrastructure or take your entire network out of commission for a few hours while you investigate? You really don't have time to investigate. Your investigation should take seconds and hopefully even faster with the help of ML and artificial intelligence. So that's why we bring not just next generation data protection solutions, we also bring the Xscript centralized management console, which puts your data protection view under the same umbrella. And that's where you can quickly react to compromises. With advanced monitoring of this product, available as part of this product, you can also reduce the compromise detection window because it will flag questionable activity, whether it's related to encryption keys, whether it's related to data movement. It'll flag this questionable activity and escalate it to the people responsible for evaluating it and detecting a compromise. This gives you a little bit of a better view of, as the data moves out of the data center to a regional data center, to low bandwidth and disconnected sites, or a high bandwidth and disconnected sites. Think, like I said, remote oil rigs, sporadic connectivity, still generating a lot of valuable data, connected to the enterprise every once in a while. That does not give you an excuse not to deploy data protection there. We give you tools to deploy data protection there, still taking advantage of enterprise-grade key management, and make sure whatever data you generate still benefits from enterprise-grade data protection. When the internet connectivity comes up, when the submarine surfaces after 2 or 3 months underwater, it can still communicate to the corporate data center, and it can still transfer the data securely. There's a number of use cases. Telco is just one of them. Think Verizon or Ericsson. Department of Defense, we talked about intermittent connectivity on nuclear submarines. I think that's becoming our go-to example because it just shows how disconnected the environment can be. And nuclear submarines are just cool to say. Project Overmatch brought in a unique concept from the data security perspective, which is data sharing. We've been sharing data for years, but we've been doing it in different ways, right? We started by sharing data with electronic data interchange and fax machines and modems, and that was not very secure. Now we need to share very sensitive data. But what we bring to the data sharing now is maintaining the ownership while you share the data. We're going to talk about a little bit more. So that's our concept of data sharing. Navy needs to share data with Air Force or the other way around. They create a snapshot of a persistent volume. That persistent volume is encrypted with our granular data protection and encryption. It's shipped over to the other party you're sharing with, but the benefit you're getting here is that you ship it over, but you still maintain control. You can pause this data sharing or revoke this data sharing at any given point in time, whether it's the same OpenShift cluster, where these are distinct OpenShift cluster, you are in control of your data. You don't need to call on the remote party and say, hey, can you please delete my data? You can decommission access from your centralized management console without having to reach to the third party. And Red Hat OpenShift, like we said, Red Hat is an excellent partner. We've done a lot of joint collateral. We have certified our solution on Red Hat. It's available on Red Hat Marketplace. It can be installed from the Red Hat Operator Hub, essentially with what we call the one-click installation. And all of the additional security features and all the additional data protection features come from the fact that all the container images are certified, and the operator that takes care of full automated deployment and lifecycle management is also certified by Red Hat. So if you have OpenShift, or if you have Red Hat Enterprise Linux servers, we urge you to look at our data protection suite, download it, try it out, install it, and you'll see that once you install it, you will not see any performance degradation. You will not see a need to change your business processes. You will take full advantage of our data protection, and your data will be secured without having to change a single line of code in your application.
So one
can
thing
I,
of that.
go ahead.
Go
It sounds like we both want to add to this. Go ahead,
Yep.
Fatih.
Yeah. So, okay, when people see, look, I joined Red Hat not too long ago. I work in Google and also as a developer, right? When people see RHEL, they kind of think, oh, I will not able to have an access to it as a developer. I will not have a chance to access because I don't have subscription for support. Look, world has changed. Okay, don't live in past. You can go as of today and as of yesterday as well. You can go and create a developer account and get an access to RHEL as an operating system, as well as OpenShift with your developer credentials. All right. It shouldn't be a big news to you, but if this is first time you're hearing, do not get scared when you see RHEL. RHEL has changed by means of access and consumption. Please go check it and use it. Okay.
And so what Fatih just said, in a deployment, whether it's a telco type of 5G or an edge, you're going to need both. OpenShift is not going to work alone. You're going to have RHEL servers that may have the data. So OpenShift is there with the master worker nodes and plenty of them, but you may also have RHEL servers there that are containing all the data. So they would need to work in conjunction. And yeah, you're going to need to have both to do any type of development around it. And that's going to grow, and we're just going to protect the data underlying that infrastructure. And I don't know how many other use cases that we'll see, but they will definitely evolve. I mean, you can see there's a large public sector, but I think we're also seeing the automotive industry where how many, again, exabytes of data are going to be out there. Elon Musk is going to have his Tesla pushing terabytes of data every year from each individual. And there's going to be a personal level of data that needs to be protected. The infrastructure will grow around that. I'm sure we'll see OpenShift in someone's car at some point. Same thing can be said about the manufacturing or even energy. So they're going to abound, but at its start, yes, we're all dipping our toes in. I think telecom, 5G, and some edge in the certain areas is really going to be the step out and the use cases we'll see first. And as they start, it's nice to walk out with them versus after the fact. And I think that's where the two of us together work very well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Fatih can correct me if I heard wrong, but in one of the meetings with Red Hat, I think I heard that OpenShift actually runs on the International Space Station. And I guess the point I'm making here, if it's good for the ISS,
I cannot neither deny nor confirm.
Okay. Right. The NDA form is to follow, but I think if it's good enough for the ISS, it's definitely good enough for Teslas.
Look, as I said, Red Hat as enterprise Linux distro has changed over years by means of product portfolio, by means of operating system, platforms, tool sets, and access and control and subscription models.
Right.
Do not stay in the past. Do not get yourself embarrassed in the point you say I cannot use it because it needs license. There's no such thing. Just go learn how things evolve. The other thing is RHEL as an operating system evolved into different verticals as well. We have RHEL for edge for small tiny devices to go with, okay? And we have different approaches for these tiny devices to run still pods, not containers only, pods as in the Kubernetes pods without OpenShift with Podman. So, ta-da! You heard the news that Docker Desktop become paid. You have option with Podman. This is a commercial break.
It's a great option too, by the way, because Podman as an architectural, tool is, in my view, it's more advanced than Docker. It's doesn't require a dedicated server, doesn't use as many resources. I'd go Podman, to be honest with you, and that's my contribution to the sales pitch.
All right, thank you.
Yep. So I want to draw a little bit of a line here and hopefully help everybody understand that if you look at the security landscape and the container security and container protection, you'll see a lot of enterprises, a lot of companies running and implementing container security and protection solutions. Why is Zetaset different? What are we doing that, I mean, what we're doing really, we're about protecting the data. We are not competing with anyone, think of advanced cluster security. We're completely orthogonal to them. Synopsys, Sysdig, Aqua, they're all focusing on protecting container registry, protecting container runtime, making sure that continuous integration, continuous development pipeline is safe. We're about protecting the data. We're about protecting the data in a way that we start by saying, don't trust data protection in the modern environment. Don't trust that data protection to the infrastructure, because infrastructure protection has been around for years, and it's about that thing that's in the name, which is protecting the infrastructure. Infrastructure has no visibility or very little visibility into what's running on that infrastructure. We, by contrast, have very good visibility that, for example, we're protecting persistent volumes. And persistent volumes need to be encrypted with at least one key that is uniquely assigned to that persistent volume. So when the container that's accessing that persistent volume is compromised, your entire storage system is not compromised. We talked about the Zetaset management console that allows you to manage those hundreds and thousands of persistent volumes that you're going to have in your clusters and securely decommission them when necessary. Tim made an excellent point when he said, RHEL servers still very, very prevalent. And they're not just running OpenShift, they're also running good old and greatly evolved, as Fatih mentioned, Red Hat Enterprise Linux. And user data is not just on data partitions. User data is also on the operating system, whether it's on the swap files, whether it's in the temporary space, it's definitely everywhere. And so what we've created is an advanced product that allows you to encrypt not just the data partitions on RHEL servers, but also the operating system and system partitions. Do the same thing with high performance and the degree of manageability that is, I want to say, next generation from the perspective of managing installations of hundreds and thousands of servers. I'm not going to go through the entire value prop of this product in the interest of time, but you get manageability.
Maxim, can I jump in and give Fatih his complete sales pitch here? If you notice, the open sourced with the APIs is a perfect example of this. We're embracing Lux and dmcrypt. We're just enhancing it. So the two together are better. So, and that's all because of these APIs. Oh, you want to go back one?
Yeah, I wanted to go to your point and to say that we're building essentially a next generation data protection for the operating system on top of logs and making it more manageable and more granular.
Yeah, if you want to invite partners and to improve and further harden what is already a great infrastructure, the way to do that is open APIs and do exactly what we've done here. There's some wonderful offerings, base offerings from Red Hat, and we're just going to that next level with them. And I think it's a great marriage, and you can see some of the items. Like Maxim said, we don't have to get into all of them, but you can see how we like to say good, better, next level. That really scales with the Telco 5G. There's a certain amount that there will be limitations, and we take it to the next level with a mixed geo and different types of encryptions, different environments, whether it be OpenShift or RHEL. So we're trying to be better together.
Absolutely. And I'm going to jump to one slide back and just mention that we share similar technical approach to protecting RHEL servers and their and partitions, and similar approach of encryption in the kernel and maintaining high degree of transparency for the OpenShift. Both products, both solutions include centralized management console. That's, by the way, is in the process of being integrating with Red Hat Advanced Cluster Management. In the future, it will be integrated with Red Hat Satellite. And it offers essentially the next degree of higher degree of the data protection, but on the granularity of data partitions on the full disk and persistent volume protection on Red Hat OpenShift. And if we didn't mention advanced monitoring enough, then I think that's another good place to mention it, because what advanced monitoring allows you to do is to look at the crypto usage and look at the data usage um, before, during, or after the encryption, put it in the context of a user-defined policy, and to say, well, now the process that's used to encrypt and decrypt data during the work week at a rate of 100 megabits per second, now it's encrypting and decrypting data during the weekend at a much higher rate. Is that a breach? We don't know, but it's enough for us to raise a concern, to generate informational and log messages and alerts with a lot of contextual information, like we said, smart keys, right? The keys that know which object they're protecting. So you're looking at an alert that says, hey, this persistent volume that's been accessed during the work week is now accessed during the weekend at a much higher rate. So that's the degree of knowledge you're going to have. You're not going to have to jump between systems to have that degree of understanding. I'm going to go quickly through the performance results, because we've seen it with our customers and with some of the proof of concept engagement, that not only we bring a degree of transparency and not only we bring the ease of provisioning, we've also seen that customers are actually reporting that they practically do not see any performance degradation. That particular use case was deploying Zetaset Xcrypt Kubernetes encryption um, in a single node Kubernetes cluster. So not a very powerful installation, not a very powerful machine as far as the Kubernetes clusters go. Single node running all the OpenShift, all the Kubernetes services, and running Ceph as a storage, and us deploying our solution that can manage Ceph storage natively, by the way, and encrypt it with the next generation encryption. Not slowing things down. In fact, the application actually showed better performance with our solution, well, mostly because the application was just network bound more so than it was disk IO bound. But the main point is degree of transparency like you've never seen before. Don't have to change your management or application development processes. Um, and the level of performance where your users will likely not see any performance degradation. I'm going to stop here and pass the control over to Fatih, and he's going to bring in his great expertise and experience with designing large-scale architecture-based systems, and walk you through as to why what we just walked through is extremely important, and he's going to emphasize it from a higher level. So, Fatih, take it away.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. It was great, Maxim. It was really great.
Thank you.
So Maxim thought through this importance of security of a data that you use and you generate and you share, and how you can share with Zetaset portfolio, right? Security is not a single thing only focused on data at rest, not only for data at transit either. The whole security is a full-blown nightmare for some people, and for some people, if they put in place right tools and sets and automation, it's just way of living, right? So throughout your journey in your enterprise domain, you will likely go through these questions, and some of them will really bug you throughout the night, and you may lose your sleep. It's real. Like, hey, I had this security tools and products in my network before in my data center. Is it really gonna work with my multi-cloud strategy? Because that was a physical equipment I used. Now I cannot put that in the cloud. Maybe they have virtual appliances. Would it be enough to secure my business? Or you may go through and say, hey, you know what? I'm thinking I was using applications directly deployed on the RHEL servers or Linux distros or NT servers. Now we are talking about the virtualization with the VMs as well as containerization. Is it going to be different? If so, how, right? These are the questions coming into your mind. Now, today we are here. Most of our conversation is mainly about microservices, i.e. containerized applications running on the industry de facto platform, i.e. Kubernetes, right? This is our baseline for today. So when we are looking at our baseline, means that your applications are now packaged in different form as a container image. Instead of you go install a package directly on an operating system where your host was yours, no longer that's your reality. You're just yet another tenant on a shared infrastructure. And the way you deliver your application is totally new form of application delivery with the pipelines as well as formatting. So when you're doing such a migration and living through such journey, you may ask yourself, am I ready for this? So when you say, am I ready for this, in the sense of, do I have the right people and the right talent? Because if you're getting into a journey, you may likely think, hey, I can go pull, since this is open source, I'll just pull down from the, like a vanilla distro, Kubernetes, I'll deploy it and I will put my applications on it. I shall be fine, right? That's the idea many enterprises lived through in the last, 6 years. And they realize that it's not about doing day zero. It's about doing day one and day two operations, keeping the platform up, healthy and securely running with your applications, with lifecycle management of the platform as well as your applications. And then they realize, okay, maybe I should just not focus on the platform, not focus on the operating system, focus on my applications and get help and benefit from what is out there as enterprise grade and use it with the good model with the multi-cloud strategy. So since this is security, we are looking from the person of a security SecOps perspective. So multi-cloud is a reality together with your on premises. You will have, since we are talking about distributed computing, a lot of edge locations. Maxim mentioned actually thousands of locations. I'll go beyond that, 100,000 of locations. Imagine every cruise ship has their own compute. Every plane has their own compute. Every car has their own compute. It's not thousands anymore. We're talking about billions, millions and billions and destination as a compute infrastructure. So since you're so spread it, you have spread it infrastructure, and you have to run this application safely, securely, and performant way in a consistent way. How can you enforce this? How can you create a consistent security policies across different diverse compute infrastructures, yet millions of them? And how can you execute those policies and make sure they're compliant with your internal as well as external security rules and guidances? And if something is drifting, something is shifting from what you declared, then you should get an alert, and you should either manual and or automated way of eliminating those drifts. So this is the persona that we are looking at as of today for security. Maxim mentioned about Red Hat Advanced Cluster Management as well as advanced cluster security for Kubernetes. So you may see, okay, you guys are talking too much product names. ACM is one, ACS another, yet we have a QA for image registry. So there is no single, well, there could be a single, I would say, silver bullet to address all this. Would you like it? Would you swallow that? I wouldn't. Why? Because what if only I need one part of that pill combined with another variation, because my enterprise need is not necessarily same with anybody else's. For example, I'm in the FinServ, right? Or I could be in the healthcare, or I could be in the telco. So every vertical, even inside the vertical, the business needs are different, i.e. their technology stack dependencies are different as well. That's where the beauty of open source comes in. With this, Zetaset addresses some part of it, another part addresses another part of it, and together it comes with the harmony and addresses the whole end-to-end spectrum of your needs. In here, advanced cluster management provides you observability by means of logs, metrics, and traces collection from multiple clusters. It could be a micro cluster such as single node Kubernetes distro, which we call single node OpenShift, Snow, or it could be a small compact cluster with the 3 nodes and 3 masters, or it could be a large cluster, depending on the scale of your application need. And then, as well as seeing all these clusters from lifecycle management, upgrading them, seeing what's the utilization level. So ACM's beauty is that from single pane, you can see your distributed infrastructure, multiple locations, and then see the utilization levels, as well as kickstart your application delivery, test them based on your policies and needs, where to go. So what advanced cluster security for Kubernetes does is, okay, you deploy your application. And then day one, deploying application is not a single day job, it's a continuous journey. Yeah, but I scanned my image, container, base image is safe. It is safe as the day you scanned it. What if vulnerability discovered tomorrow or today afternoon?
And it will be.
It will be,
absolutely
yeah,
will
right?
be.
Absolutely. So this is a continuous journey. So you need somebody to scan these images, not only for deployment time, but also lifecycle management of your application perspective and give you insights. And that's what Advanced Cluster Security does with the probes, doing this through the probes. Quay is your image registry. Whenever you're uploading a new version of your application bundled with the container-based image, it scales automatically and also provides role-based access controls and distribution policies, who can reach, where can this can be deployed, and so on and so forth, as well as mirroring for high availability and high throughput downloads. So this is the beauty. So advanced cluster management, long story short, your cluster lifecycle management, single pane, not only for deploying, but and running and for observability. Advanced cluster security is probing and maintaining, looking your applications real time and seeing if there's anything weird going on. And QA is your backend for your image registries. Okay. So what it does is obviously start from platform, go to workload and their application fleet. I'm not going to go through this. If you are interested, feel free to reach out to us for detailed session. We have really, so one of the beauty of Red Hat, I know it's kind of a preaching you too much, Red, but we have well documentation every release. This is what makes us enterprise.
Definitely.
In comparison to what's out there in the wild open source projects. You can go download the GitHub project, but good luck with understanding what it does. Good luck finding the proper documentation to install and configuring it. Us as enterprise software company, we have well documentation for every release, as well as configuration models with the options on multi-cloud strategy for you. All right, so this is, I'm not gonna go through this, maybe just fast forward a little bit. Automation side, because the scale, if you remember what Maxim showed, moving from right, which was your core data center, maybe you have tens or hundreds of these, and then moving to the left side with the distributed edge locations, thousands and millions of them. So in order to deliver this business model, you have to either scale your talent house. Instead of having 10 people, you will have thousands of people focus on these infrastructure, or you do your job in more smart way with automation. All right. So automation is the keyword here. With the new edge applications, you have to focus on automation. Make your automation not only be part of delivering application pipelines, but also configuration management as well. Okay. So make everything as much as automated with the suite of portfolio of open source projects or product using, and that will make your life much easier and less, I would say, painful. Where Ansible Tower comes into the picture, pre-integrated with ACM, that gives you able to run right through the GUI that, hey, these are the automation templates I want to run with these edge locations. And we also provide templates for that. So that's the beauty of ACM pre-integrated with Ansible Tower now.
And this is day 0, day 1, and day 2, because you got to be able to deploy the environment. You can't claim your environment scales if you can't deploy it quickly.
Absolutely.
And if it's not manageable easily.
Absolutely. As I was saying, deploying is day 0, day 1, okay, but it's a continuous journey. As long as your application up and running, you will be at the edge of the hook. What if something goes wrong? Because there will be a new vulnerability discovered, and someone will come and try to run crypto mining in your cluster. Hey, you may say, dude, you're talking like 007 James Bond thing. No, bro, I'm telling you, majority of the Kubernetes hacks, the reason they are happening, they happen and they will happen. Someone wants to use your infrastructure. Someone wants to burn your cloud credits so they can build their own business of making money. And crypto mining is a good way to make money out of someone else's infrastructure, which they are not paying for, okay? Compliances and templates. ACM out-of-box provide these for you, either directly use it or twist, kind of edit it a little bit based on your needs. Say, I want, for example, this cluster to run certain way of configuring things with the secrets, rather than giving the secrets manually or through a text file. You can enforce these and create these boards and see all these which policies are compliant, which are not, and if there's non-compliance, which clusters and which applications in those clusters are not compliant. You can see from the single pane of glass. Okay, that's the beauty. All right. Next, that's it. Thanks. So here's the thing. Long story short, we are here to help you to scale your application with the edge infrastructure that the 5G is enabling for you to use it. So there was a question in the Q&A. It was saying that, hey, is 5G good enough to deliver all these fantastic ideas of high throughput application? It may be, it may not be. But the point is not that. It's not about the radio throughput that you need. It's about, can you maintain your application to run your business on in a safe and secure manner? Because scale now is in the million scale for deploying and maintaining. So how are you going to do this in a safe way? So that's the question we are trying to answer today here.
Right, and there's enough bandwidth in 5G network, definitely, if you implement it properly. But that requires the data to live close to the edge. You just can't go to the data center every time you need a piece of analytics. Especially, Fatih said the magic word to us, which is multi-tenancy. That's a key to 5G performance. Do you have enough bandwidth? Yes. Do you have time to figure out your data protection strategy? Well, you better start now. I think that's the
And I encourage all of you, I know we're almost out of time, for the templates out of the box. You can see those different regulations. They've only gotten more stricter. Right. Just in the last 6 months with all the cybersecurity attacks. Just the Biden administration continues to give out more higher regulatory requirements, which I completely agree with. And I think both Red Hat and Zetaset are in a perfect place to help you get there quickly.
Yep.
Look, one of the things I saw as a bad practice, not necessarily we need to talk about best practice and good practice. Bad practice is what I saw while I was working at one of the hyperscalers, right? So hyperscalers love to see your application running on cloud. Even they encourage you, give you cloud credits to start with. And then they say, I'll give you this amount of dollars in cloud credits so you can start deploying your applications. And if you start acting like, okay, I depend on Google's infrastructure. So Google is, for example, or Amazon or Azure is responsible for the security of my application. Dude, you're wrong thinking. They're providing infrastructure. Your application is your application. Your application needs to be secured. It's your duty to secure. If you need tools, go find those tools. We are giving you some hints what you can use and what you can leverage. But do not expect that, hey, I put some credit card information or social security number into S3 bucket and I didn't select encrypt. Good luck. That belongs to the rest of the whole globe now.
Excellent point. Trusting your application security to the infrastructure is a really bad idea. I think this is one of the excellent takeaways from today's presentation, is that don't trust your infrastructure provider with your security and with your sensitive data.
Absolutely.
All right, so I'm here to crash the party, and sorry guys, what a great conversation. I feel bad that I have to break in, but we are 3 minutes to the top of the, 2 minutes to the top of the hour. So unfortunately, that is all the time that we have for today's webinar. Good stuff, guys. I really enjoyed listening to the conversation, and we did have one question, which from Vasanta that Fatih went ahead and answered, and that's awesome. So thank you very much. And if anybody else has a question, they can still go ahead and put it on in the question and answer tab. If we don't get to the question before the end of the webinar, then please know that the fine folks at Red Hat and are getting a copy of all of the questions that came in, and they will be more than happy to follow up with you offline to get your question answered. Also, a quick reminder that today's event has been recorded. So if you missed any or all of the event, or if you just want to watch it again, you'll have the opportunity to do so. We will be sending out an email after today's webinar that contains a link to access the webinar on demand. And the webinar is also going to be living on the devops.com website. So you can always go look for it there. Just go to devops.com/webinars, look in the on-demand section, and it should be right there waiting for you. All right, before we close things out, I do want to do the drawing for the 4 $100 Amazon gift cards. So without further ado, let's go ahead and do that.
Yay.
Some people think it is the most exciting part of the webinar. I happen to disagree, but it is a lot of fun anyway. So our first winner today is Mallory C. Congratulations, Mallory. Our second winner is Rick S. Congratulations, Rick. Our third winner today is Doug H. Congratulations, Doug. And our fourth and final winner is JY. Congratulations, Jay. We'll be following up with all four of you offline by email to get your Amazon gift card over to you. So please check your inbox. And if you don't see anything there, please check your spam folder. Guys, what a great presentation. Maxim and Tim and Fatih, all the way around, you guys just hit it out of the park. Thank you so much for such great information and for lending us an hour of your time to go through with our audience. So I do appreciate it. I know the audience did as well. So thanks again, guys. Appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Charlie.
All right, great. I also want to thank the audience for joining me, because without you, we are nothing. So I hope to see you again on a future webinar. But until then, this is Charlene O'Hanlon, and I'm signing off. Have a great day, everybody, and please stay safe.